Hello there, and welcome to this episode of Force Ghost Conversations. This is your host, Anthony King, and this week I'm joined by Mercedes Gleeson from the ChatDisney podcast to discuss the ride Star Tours. If you're a fan of the podcast and would like to consider pledging your support, there will be a link in the episode description for you to check out the various tiers offered. Also, please be sure to check out our T Public store to buy some Force Ghost Conversations merchandise. And without further ado, it is time to gather around the campfire for some Force Ghost Conversations. Welcome back to Forest Ghost Conversations, everyone. I am thrilled to have this conversation with Mercedes from the Chat Disney podcast, a wonderful podcast talking about all things Disney, but particularly with a focus on Disneyland Paris, as they are based in the United Kingdom, to chat about the ride Star Tours and to celebrate it and to just geek out about it and focus on its history, its place in Disney parks history, its lore. The changes to the ride over the years and what we speculate for the future of Star Tours as time goes on. So very exciting topic and conversation, and you certainly don't want to miss out on it. Before we get into that, let's chat some Cloud City gossip, the news that has taken place over the Lucasfilm and Star Wars adjacent galaxy over the past week. And to start, Young Jedi Adventures, if you're following with that High Republic story, which we certainly are here on the podcast, the final episodes from season 2 will officially premiere on Disney Plus and Disney Junior on March 19th. So mark your calendars for that, folks. We got some new Star Wars coming just in about a little over a month and a half at this point. Additionally, Star Wars Path of the Lightsaber, a manga, was announced. It'll be written by Kenny Ruiz and will take place in between the events of The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. And there will also be some High Republic connections too. Now, there hasn't been a release date yet for this, at least announced for this new manga, but speculation is that it will be discussed at some point during the impending, or upcoming, I should say, not impending, but Star Wars Celebration taking place in Tokyo later this year. So be on the lookout for that. And of course, if more details come out, we'll report it on the podcast here as well. Finally, and I guess somewhat tragic and disappointing news, reports are surfacing that the Galactic Star Cruiser, aka what some would consider to be the Star Wars Hotel that was here at Walt Disney World, has be there are rumors that will become office space for Disney Imagineering. Now, I know that they're doing a lot of projects here at Walt Disney World. I say here because I live about 10 minutes from it, and they are doing a lot of projects over the next couple of years to kind of renovate and update a lot of the spaces within there. Primarily, the thing I'm probably most excited for at this point will be adding the addition of Indiana Jones to Animal Kingdom. I think that'll be awesome. But with all of that, I guess they need a space to house these Imagineers and to give them an office space by which to be close to the parks in order to conduct their work and go back and forth from the park space itself versus an office. I don't know. I mean, it's just slightly disappointing and disheartening because I had high hopes for a refurbishment of the Galactic Star Cruiser or a change to it so that it'd be more accessible to folks. I understand some of the shortcomings that can arise because of it, and its location and how it requires shuttles to and fro Hollywood studios, and the logistical mess of that might have been a problem area in regards to opening it in some capacity for the public again. But yeah, I mean, if true, I'm disheartened about it. I, of course, will be at HalseyCon in October this year to celebrate the Galactic Star Cruiser and the fandom that has arisen within it because of their experiences. And if people haven't been on the Galactic Star Cruiser, there's a community of people that just are enthralled with what it did for the Star Wars story, and I'm one of them. I haven't been on it myself, and I was unfortunate to miss out on that. But we'll be at HalseyCon, so if you're going to be there, we'll also be there too, and love to chat with you and geek out about the memories that you might have over the Star Cruiser. Anywho, that is all the news that I have for this week, folks. Of course, If you want to follow us on all of our social media platforms, we're available on X, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Threads, Blue Sky. I think I covered them all. Just search for Force Ghost Conversations, and we'll be in there. We'll be on those platforms in some capacity, and we'd love to continue the conversation with you. Also, if you want to leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, that would also be tremendously helpful. And as it helps to like help us beat the algorithm in a way, it pushes the show to more people. It gets more popular. All that stuff. It just goes a long way. And you will forever be in. I'll be forever grateful to whoever does that. So, thank you for listening to this portion of the episode. We'll be back on the other side of the short break with our conversation with Mercedes Gleeson about Star Tours. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Force Those Conversations, everybody. It is incredible to say this sentence here, but I just did the math before hopping on to record here. Star Tours is 38 years old. I can't even believe that that is a phrase coming out of my mouth. In January of 1987, this fantastic ride opened in Disneyland, and then it would open in Walt Disney World, and then Tokyo Disneyland, and then at that time Euro Disneyland and Euro Disney, and then became Disneyland Paris. So it is a ride that is around the world, and we're here to chat about the ride and its innovations and its place in Disney history. And of course, we had to bring our wonderful Disney correspondent from the Chat Disney podcast, Mercedes Gleeson. Mercedes, welcome back to Force Ghost Conversations, and how are you doing?
Hi, Anthony, and thank you so much for having me. I am great. I'm very excited to be talking about Star Tours, one of my favorite Disney attractions. And I know it's very rude to ask a woman her age, but I'm actually quite shocked that Star Tours is older than me.
Hey, I mean, like, it's like that. It's always been there. Like Star
Yeah.
Tours is like it feels so new, but yet it's not. It's crazy to think that this ride is
Mhm.
just. I can't imagine the parks without it at this point. And we'll get into this question a bit later. But like, yeah, 38 years. Like
Crazy.
1987 was 38 years ago. Oh,
That's worse. Yeah, don't say that.
oh.
Don't repeat that.
That's worse than saying that Star Tours is 38 years old. So
Yeah.
we'll just keep saying that one then. But you just mentioned Star Tours is one of your favorite rides. So let's get to the beginning of that here with to start our journey off. What are your first memories with Star Tours? And I assume this was at Disneyland Paris, then Euro Disney. How do you first remember Star Tours?
Yeah, so it has always been there, like, and I think for me, it's a really interesting one because I don't remember a time where Star Tours wasn't a part of Disneyland. So for
Yeah,
me, with growing up with Disneyland Paris, Euro Disney as my closest park, it's very quintessential Disney. And I kind of view Star Tours the same way that I would view like a Big Thunder Mountain or a
sure.
Pirates of the Caribbean, because it's one of the OG attractions from growing up. And I just have a really distinct memory of the attraction. So in Paris, Star Tours is located in Discoveryland, which is like
Hmm.
Tomorrowland and the Magic Kingdom. And I remember being 10, 11 years old and there being loads of stormtroopers outside the attraction, just kind of
Hmm.
roaming Discoveryland and being absolutely terrified. So much so that I didn't want to go on the attraction for a time after
Oh
that because I
wow.
was scared that there was going to be a
They did their job
stormtrooper.
well.
Yeah, they are quite scary stormtroopers. But yeah, so yeah, but it, as I say, for me, it's the memory is as old as my Disneyland memories.
Mhm. And was that with, Rex? Was it the first iteration of Star Tours that when you're first on it? So was Rex the pilot, and you did the Death Star trench run, etcetera?
Exactly. So yeah, Rex was there, and when I think all of the obviously all of the attractions kind of globally were updated to C3PO, and
Mhm.
that's the case for Paris now as well.
Yeah, yeah. And so cool to have that fun experience there with the stormtroopers and you just feeling immersed. Like that was kind of like an immersion that Disney was trying to incorporate with this. So it's just really
Mm.
cool.
Almost a
Um,
foreshadowing, one
of
might say.
You might say that, yeah, looking towards the future in many aspects there. Um, and here's the interesting thing is, like, for me, my first real trip, I went to Walt Disney World when I was 2, 3. I don't remember it at all except for crying. So I don't remember if I went at all on Star Tours back then, but I do remember in 2008, the first real time that I really would officially say I went to Walt Disney World. Um, my mom didn't tell me at all that this was a ride, and she knew I was a big Star Wars fan, and she was like, "I don't think you like Hollywood Studios at all." And lo and behold, she was like, "We'll go on our first day there, it's a week-long trip. Eh, I don't know if you'll like this park or not, but we'll get it out of the way, and then we'll enjoy the other ones more throughout the week." And then you walk in, you turn to the left, and you right past the Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular show, you see the Walker, the AT-AT, and the the trees from Endor, and you feel like you're walking into a bunker. Like, that was mind blowing for me that they're able to do something like that. And I know that's something that's only at Walt Disney World right now. I don't think they have that over in Tokyo, but I can confirm at least in Paris and California that they don't have that there. So it was just wild that this was an experience, and then just now that was iteration 2.0 for
Mhm,
Star Tours. So this is when they start incorporating things from the prequels
mhm.
and the mix and matches, if you will, of
Yeah.
different experiences on the ride. So just to see these things that I had enjoyed watching in the films, and to experience those in a different setting, and the ride is spectacular. That again, kudos to the Imagineers and the team putting this together and keeping it updated throughout all these years. Like, that's a fantastic feat that they've done, and it completely it made that park my favorite park from day one,
Oh,
and it
love
still is, and
that.
it still is my favorite park now. I can't.
Wow, I think you're the only person
I
to
know I'm
say
one of
that
few.
ever.
But I tell people this. I'm like, "All right, you got Star Tours, you got Rise of the
I
Resistance, you
agree,
got
I
Slinky
agree.
Dog, Mickey and
Mhm.
Minnie's, Tower of Terror, Muppets." Like, it's all in one
I think
place.
it's got the strongest attractions for sure.
And
It just I
Fantasmic
think
at the end of the day, like,
yeah,
come
no,
on.
I don't disagree with you.
So anybody with, hot takes against Hollywood studios, come at me. We'll have a chat.
Yeah. No,
But
I hear you, I hear you. I think what's really interesting about what you just said there is, like, obviously, it's no secret that you're a huge Star Wars fan, like, hello, we're on
yeah.
this podcast. What's crazy is, like, I'm not a huge Star Wars fan, like, I know a lot about Star
Mhm.
Wars, I've seen all the movies, like, I can have a conversation about Star Wars, we have done many times together on
Yes.
this podcast, but I actually was introduced to the ride first.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
so I knew about Star like, who doesn't know
I mean,
about
yeah,
Star
it
Wars,
permeates
right?
popular culture, sure.
Yeah, exactly, and I would say, pop culture is probably a specialism of mine, like, even if I've
Mhm.
never watched something, I normally know a lot
You
more
knew that
about
Darth
it.
Vader was Luke's father.
Yeah, of course, exactly, and, like, I didn't know Luke and Leia were twins, actually, that was a
Ooh,
surprise when
big
I watched
twist.
the movies, but yeah, and then when I met my husband, quite early on, it was like, "Oh, and I really like Star Wars," so it was like, "Oh, okay," and then I remember he got tonsillitis, and I was like, "Would you wanna watch" he couldn't really talk, so I was like, "Should we just watch Star Wars
What will
together?" And
make him happy here?
yeah, and I'd seen bits and pieces, like, particularly the prequels, because obviously that was, like, my childhood, so the pod
Hey,
racing
yeah.
and that sort of stuff. But yeah, we sat down properly and watched it, and anyway, massive tangent, but the point I'm trying to make is I think having the background from the ride, from Star Tours, and
Mhm.
particularly, that time you were talking about in the noughties where they started to mix and match the scenes, it definitely gave me, like, that moment of, like, "Oh, this is that character from Star Tours," and,
Yeah.
like, "Oh, okay," and I think that's what Disney Imagineering does so incredibly well. My mum has never watched a Star Wars movie, but Star Tours is one of her favorite rides, and she could tell you exactly who C-3PO is because the way
I was
that
like, he's the
they
pilot on Star Tours.
well, yeah, exactly. Exactly. Oh, that guy that flies the plane.
I don't
Um,
see the Star Tours speeder anywhere in this movie.
yeah, like, why aren't they going on a cruise? Like,
He's
I thought
Endor.
they're going on holiday. But yeah, she, the kind of like the bumbling and the kind of, the relationship between him and R2, it's captured so
Mhm,
well. And they talk about this in the Imagineering series. I think Joe Rody spoke about it with Rocket in
mhm.
the Guardians attraction. Like he was like, I know that there are thousands of people that are gonna go on this attraction that have never watched this movie, and I have a job to tell them exactly who Rocket is in that
Good
prequel,
point.
like,
Yeah.
in the pre-show. And it's kind of I feel very similarly about Star Tours. And again, like my sister's watched like Force Awakens and like some of the newer movies, but again, she's a complete Star Wars noob, but she loves Star Tours. And again, like she knows who all the
Wow.
characters are. I think they do a really good job of making it super accessible. There's those nuggets and like little Easter eggs for the real die hard fans, but it's also super accessible for just any kind of park goer, which I absolutely love.
This is really a brilliant tangent that we're going on here that I really have never considered, to be honest, because it is in a park and it is a ride that is featured around the globe. And the fact that this could be the entryway for a lot of people into the Star Wars galaxy is
Yeah,
a lot of weight and pressure on this ride that I've really
right.
never considered before.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that happens for me at least. There's a few kind of franchises and movies and stuff that I've been interested in because I've seen something in a park, and like you and
Sure.
I have spoken many times about rest in peace, the old Armageddon
Oh,
attraction.
oh,
But like I, as a child, was obsessed with Armageddon, and it was because I went on the ride. So then it was like, "Oh, I like that ride." So then I went home and my dad and I watched the movie, and then
watched the
that was it.
movie,
So
started listening to Aerosmith. You're like,
exactly, exactly. Had Ben Affleck posters on the wall, like,
oh,
properly obsessed.
hey.
But no, like, joking aside, that does happen for a lot of people, you know? They go on these attractions. It's like the old Pirates of the Caribbean thing where people are like, "Wait, the ride came first?" And for a lot of people, these rides come first and, you know, it's their introduction.
As a Disney fan, does that as a parks fan, let me just say, does that, like, hurt you to your core when someone's like, "Wait, there's a ride?"
I mean,
It's based
I
off of a
just
ride? The ride
I
came
just
first?
can't believe that, like, my husband it was the first time we went to Disney together, and I don't know how it came up, and I thought, "You know what? Bless him, like, he's not really into Disney, fine." And then recently, I was laughing about it in front of his family, and his sister, my sister-in-law, who has been to Disneyland with me, went, "Oh, wait, did the film come out second?" And I was like, "I can't with you people, like, who
Get
are
with the
you?"
program, guys.
Yeah, I know. But no,
Watch the
I
Imagineering story, get and then come back to me.
yeah, exactly. But anyway, so we're talking today about Star Tours, that ride that set off, you know, the movie industry where they decided to create 9 movies off
Yeah.
the back of this 80s
Yeah,
attraction.
exactly.
Yeah, 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 of course.
Well, I just love it because it's this ultimate synergy nowadays that I think is what people are trying to do. Like you going on this ride or other people perhaps going on this ride and then being inspired to go check it out is
Yes.
like the whole purpose of doing this in some ways, right? They
Yeah.
want people to do that and then go out and purchase the movies and all that stuff. And that's, Mickey Minnie's Runaway Railway. They want you to
Yes.
go on that ride and then go watch the Mickey shorts when you're in
Yes.
your hotel room afterwards. Or
Exactly.
um, you know, Aerosmith, right? They want you to hop on the rock and roller coaster and then go buy a record afterwards. Like it's all a part of this whole scheme. But it's
Absolutely.
brilliant. And
Which
and
I
that's
think
yeah,
also
go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say ties in really nicely with the fact that they're adding The Mandalorian and, like, the Disney Plus content to
Yeah.
Star Tours now as well, because it's,
Yeah.
like, pushing people to watch those series as well, so it's like the job is never done.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, hold your thoughts on that one. We got a specific question about that coming up in a bit here. But we talked a little bit. We scratched the surface about the theming here about this ride, and to my knowledge, correct me if I'm wrong here, but this might be the first non-Disney IP that has been featured within a Disney park. I know we get to Armageddon eventually, but I think this might have been the stepping stone to get to the Armageddon attraction. So why do you think that Star Wars overall, now that you've seen all the films and you've been on the ride, why do you think that it was a good fit for the Disney brand?
So, I think my sister put it perfectly. There's this whole kind of like discord at the moment around kind of classic Disney fans saying, "Oh, Star Wars and Marvel don't have any place," and da 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 da.
Mm,
And I remember sitting down with my sister and watching The Force Awakens with her the first time, and her exact words were, "How could anyone argue that this isn't Disney?" She was
ooh,
like, "It's literally got a princess in it," which made me laugh. But I kind of agree. And I think that, obviously the real driving force was the fact that George Lucas himself said he wouldn't work with any other company on this
Yeah.
project. He wanted it in a Disney park because, they hold themselves to a higher standard. And I
Yeah.
think ultimately that's what all of these IPs have in common. In my opinion, Marvel is the best of the best when it comes to comic book movies, superhero
Mhm.
movies. I think Star Wars is the best of the best when it comes to sci-fi. I think that, yeah, it holds itself to a higher standard. It's also just beautiful storytelling, really rich character development. Like, of course,
Mhm.
Yoda belongs next to Stitch and Buzz and all the other kind of space characters in the
Yeah.
gift store. And I think, yeah, it's cinema at its finest, classic storytelling. It's not castles, it's spaceships, but it's still otherworldly and magical in its own way.
Yeah.
And it's just, yeah, the best of its category. And so
Absolutely.
therefore it's a good match, I think, a good partnership.
And you're absolutely right. Yoda fits in along all those other characters in the parks, and Princess Leia, it fits in right with Princess Jasmine, and all the other famous princess characters of the Disney canon as well. This is a Star Wars is a modern fairy tale.
Yes.
It is modern myth. It is just uh, people being put into situations that we're able to watch them have these adventures out in space, and then we take the themes from those and make ourselves better people afterwards. And that's exactly what you would watch those fables for. Is what you would watch Beauty and the Beast for. It's what you watch Little Mermaid for, right? You learn these lessons as a kid, and that's exactly what Star Wars does. So I think that's why it fits wonderfully within the branding of the Disney park. And George Lucas was there at Disneyland on day 2 of opening. Like, how could it be any better of a synergy between the two of them, other than that wonderful factoid? Like, I couldn't imagine Star Wars at a Universal park. I couldn't imagine at Six Flags.
No.
And the way that they've continued to be really respectful of the property moving forward with it. Like, they take the time, the effort, the energy that it takes in order to make sure that it feels appropriate within the universe. I mean, obviously, we can point out some of the things like people listening may have seen like the actual launch of Star Tours at Disneyland when like Han Solo comes out and does like this like weird dance number. And uh, I'm sure people also remember like the Star Wars nights they used to have at Walt Disney World, or Star Wars weekends, I think they actually used to call
So
them.
yeah, and they had it was
And they
always
had like
in
those
May,
dance
wasn't
offs or
it?
something like that, and
Yeah, yeah.
and like Vader would come out with like Boba Fett and all that stuff, and just like do a dance off right up front of the walker
Yeah.
at Star Tours. I'm like, okay, you can have some
And they'd
kitschy
have,
stuff.
like, the Fab Five characters dressed as Star Wars characters as well, like Minnie dressed as Leia
Yes.
and, like,
Yep. Get
Mickey
the
dressed
buns
as
out and all
Han.
that. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's funny because you said there about it being the first time another IP was in a Disney park, which absolutely is correct. I think Lucasfilm were probably the first because, like, the Indiana Jones coaster
And
in
then led to that
Paris
too. Yeah.
is, like, one of the opening day attractions, I believe. If not opening day, it was, like, very, very
Hmm.
close too. And yeah, it's funny because my co-host Tash on the Chat Disney podcast, who's not biased in any way at all, doesn't have as much of an issue with Lucasfilm and Star Wars and Indiana Jones and so on being
Hmm.
included in Disney parks, but Marvel really annoys her. And I'm like, but that's just because you don't remember a time
That's
before.
right.
And she
That's
owns
right.
that. She's like, yeah, you're right. That's exactly why. It's because,
You're
even
right,
though
but I'm still gonna hold this opinion.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, she won't sway. But no, I think for her, she's like, even though, Disney didn't officially buy Lucasfilm until much, much later,
Hmm.
growing up as a child, she went on Star Tours, she watched the Indiana Jones stunt show, she went on the Indiana Jones
Sure.
attraction in California. So
Oh,
it already
so good.
felt baked into the company.
Hmm. What did she feel about Armageddon? What did what was her thoughts on Armageddon? We're always
I've
gonna
never
come back to
asked her.
Armageddon here.
I've never I think Armageddon is Touchstone. I think
It
it's
Oh,
Disney.
really? It might
I
be
I
Disney?
think it's Disney, yeah.
Well,
It's
I'll
so
be.
so wild, isn't it? So
Hmm.
crazy.
And if it what then that begs a different question of what are they doing? It
Yeah,
should be front and center.
I know, it's hilarious, and I feel like, for anyone who listens to Mammoth Club have a podcast, and it's like a Disney Channel original movie podcast, and every week they have this running joke that Molly has to talk about Armageddon, like the movie, and honestly, I feel like Molly, Alan, and Max from Mammoth Club must hate me because every time they do a Q&A on Instagram, I'm like, "But do you know that there was an Armageddon attraction in Disneyland Paris and it only closed, like, recently? Like, do you know this? I need you to know." I feel like I need the world to know.
This is like I am so crushed that I was never able to experience this ride. It hurts me to
It
my
was
core.
but it was so bad. It was so bad, but I
Get out
loved
of
it.
here. It is Touchstone. I was looking it up while
Is
we were
it? So it's
quickly. Yep.
Disney.
Wow. Yep. And distributed by Buena Vista Pictures. So
I told
wow.
you, it's
It
canon.
it didn't even need to be a non-Disney IP.
No,
Oh,
it's Disney. Oh
come
gosh, it's
on,
so
Disney.
funny.
What are we doing here? They're making all those changes over to Walt Disney Studios. They gotta find a place to put it back in there. I can understand, they're doing it with Muppets, right? Move the
Yes,
Muppets over,
yep,
move Armageddon over to someplace else. They got the
right.
space. Or anywho. I'm gonna do another tangent here while we're on the topic a little bit.
Yeah,
But you mentioned that there's the Indiana. Obviously, this leads to bringing on at that time a non-Disney IP in the
mhm,
Indiana Jones
yep,
property, and the Lucasfilm thing. So that connection is there. And in Paris, you have ridden the Indiana Jones coaster. Indiana Jones et le Peril, and the Temple of Peril. I probably just butchered that entirely. I was trying to quickly look at my poster that I have of it over here to make sure I got it right.
nice.
Um, I recall seeing that there was at one point the ride went backwards.
Yep,
Do
that's
you, do you did you ride it at all when it went backwards? Do you remember this, or is this just like an urban myth, an urban
yeah,
legend?
so I'm holding up to the camera right now because 'cause we're recording, a little pin on my
Okay, I
pin
see it.
board of Indiana Jones, and you can't really see, but in French, underneath it says "à l'envers," which I think means backwards.
Oh, okay.
So, yes, I do remember it going backwards, and my parents bought me that pin because they were so proud of me that I went on it.
Well, I wrote it twice, and the question is, at what point did it go backwards? Did it do like the full ride
The
once,
whole
and then the whole
attraction,
thing went backwards?
the whole attraction.
How
It
do you
was
do the loop?
horrible.
How do you do the loop backwards? The
It was
loop is
yeah,
we were in the
it was
front row, and we
I
got
know.
thrushed around in that loop.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have to tell you that I'm not an Imagineer, nor am I an engineer or scientist, physicist. However, I'm pretty sure if you design a coaster to go forwards, like, you can't just be like, "Oh, let's do it
No,
back." Like, it's not
let's go, run it
designed.
back, guys.
Yeah, like, no, it was really, really uncomfortable. I was about oh gosh, I can't remember. I was like a preteen at this time, and I went on it with my mum because even my dad was normally the coaster person,
Mhm.
and he was like, "You're okay. I'm not going on that." So I went on it with my mum, and it made her so sick that she was just done for the day. Like, she couldn't go on anything else
Really?
after that. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
fortunately, they don't go backwards anymore,
Not
but
anymore, and
I couldn't
hopefully never
imagine it as I
again.
went on it. I'm like, "How does this do where does it go backwards at? Is it the whole
Yeah, no,
thing?"
the whole thing.
Incredible, incredible.
Yeah.
Folks, go check out this ride. It's incredible going forwards and only forwards. I can only
Yeah.
imagine how adding it backwards can add a
Yeah.
whole new element to this thing.
Yeah.
So back to the Star Tours here. Folks listening at home, thank you for coming along on this tangent with us. We're here for Star Tours, and it was a state of the art attraction. There is a great documentary called "Behind the Attractions," a whole series on Disney Plus, folks. If you haven't checked it out, and they do a specific episode on Star Tours. They also talk about it a little bit in the Imagineering Story documentary as well, but and if you want a full hour almost of Star Tours stories, they have it all on that behind the attraction site. And yeah, it was state of the art. So like, what do you feel personally that made it so unique when it first debuted to the public?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think I mean, I'm trying not to give the Imagineering series answer and try and give
Feel free to do it. No,
my own answer,
it's been out
but
for over 5 years now. They've had a chance.
okay. I mean, there's kind of 2 tangents for me. So the first one is that simulations were really new. I
Yeah.
think, we kind of have a plethora of attractions these days that use screens and simulations, so it kind of feels less new, but
Mhm.
obviously,
Mhm.
as I said at the beginning, it's older than me. So
Sure.
this at the time would have been, quite a state of the art technology, like, there just wasn't anything else like that in a Disney park or a theme park, and actually, it was quite a long time after
Yeah.
until something else was added that was similar. So I think you've got the actual mechanism of how it's working on one side, but then the second is kind of what we've already spoken about, this notion of adding an external IP into the park.
Mhm. Mhm.
I think Disney have always been very, very good at kind of seeing when they need to expand, and there's like that very I think that's in, Behind the Attraction as well, it might not be, or Imagineering Story, I can't remember, it's in some Disney Plus, series where Bob Iger's talking about how he went into the park and realized that, like, the Pixar characters were the popular ones, so
Mhm.
that's how the
Mhm.
whole kind of them buying Pixar happened, and also why they started making things like Frozen and Tangled and whatever. So, I think they are very good at kind of, like, looking within and
Yeah.
being like, "Okay, we need to bring in the big guns here," and I think that's what happened with Star Tours in terms of, yeah, engineering, but also the IP.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I agree. I agree. The engineering is state of the art. I mean, the ride is still top tier in terms of, like, its presentation, how it works, and just learning about, like, how they were really pushing the boundaries of, like, that hydraulic system back in the day, and, like, realizing that you're not moving. You're
Mhm.
you're moving, but you're staying in place, right? You're not on you feel like you're on this bumpy roller coaster of emotions kind of ride, but you're not actually blasting off into space. You are staying almost sedentary. You're just moving up and down
Yes.
in one particular space, basically. And how they were able to fit like a whole projector into the thing and play the film, which now they've changed to be digital. I think that was a wise choice for them to do that. I imagine it had many times where it had to close down for
Mm.
various maintenance reasons. But the ride is still very like I will say it's popular, obviously, but it doesn't go down that often. Like it's a very reliable ride. Like whenever
Yeah,
you're looking
that's
up
true.
like wait times, you're like, okay, Star Tours, all reliable. It's open. It's ready to rock and roll. Whereas like here at Walt Disney World Hollywood Studios, right? Rise of Resistance is constantly down. The roller coaster, Rock and Roller Coaster, will be perennially down. Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway will have times where it's down.
Yeah.
This Star Tours is gonna always be open. I feel like it's never down, and if it's down, there's something wrong.
Yeah, I think the reason that probably is actually, and I've never really given it any thought, but you're right, these newer attractions do have like more outages for sure. If you think about how Rise of not Rise of the Resistance, my goodness, Star Tours works kind
Mhm.
of behind the curtain, you've got multiple pods going off at
Yeah,
the same time.
yeah.
So if one is down, there's still
Keep
like
the rest
8
going.
that can go. And it's kind of the same with like Tower of Terror. Like Tower of Terror is never
Sure.
like completely down. Whereas with Rise of the Resistance, Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, although there's multiple vehicles, there's one kind of stage.
There's
So
moving
if
parts everywhere,
that's it. If that Kylo Ren animatronic is down, that affects everyone. Or if like one of the screens in
or
Mickey
they'll
and
B mode
Minnie's,
it.
yeah, or they'll do, well, it's been on B mode forever, hasn't it? I saw something awful the other day, massive tangent,
Oh
that
no,
The Na'vi River Journey animatronic, which apparently costs like $5 million or whatever, maybe even more, they've
higher.
put a
Yep.
screen in front of that.
Oh, Mercedes, I've seen the screen. It's not
What?
recent. It's not recent. That's been like a year now.
That's
It'll
horrific.
sometimes it'll be up, sometimes it's down. You just never know what you're getting.
That's
And
the only reason to go on that attraction
when
is
you're
to see.
waiting almost an hour for that ride plus, and
I
to
had no idea.
the end where it's the I mean, it's a nice ride, but you're really there for the money maker.
Wow.
You're there
Yeah,
for
of
that
course.
that image at the end, and it's a screen. You're like, oh man, what a letdown.
That's terrible. They should at least tell you, like, I guess you could ask a cast member, couldn't you? But anyway, massive digression. So I think, yeah, I think that's probably why Star Tours is old reliable because it all takes place within that vehicle. And
Hmm.
there are so many of those vehicles that if something happens to one, two, three of them, it can still proceed.
Absolutely, and they learned that lesson with Smuggler's Run is the same kind of
Yeah.
Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run is the same kind of format where if one goes down, that the audience doesn't know that.
Yeah.
We think we're
Yeah.
just hopping into the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah.
There's 6 other versions of the cockpit that
Exactly.
people can hop into, and you keep crowd moving and all that stuff. So it's like,
Yeah.
wow. To have that foresight to think about that, and it's so cool that they're able to do that kind of thing.
Yes.
And honestly, this ride was like I've a for anybody that's ever been to Universal Studios, particularly in Orlando, they should be very thankful that Star Tours existed that, like, paved the way for almost 90%, I would argue,
Yes.
of the rides that they
Would
have
agree.
there. I'm looking at you, Spider-Man, looking at you, Transformers. Just the
Yeah.
list goes on and on of very similar ride-based
Yeah, yeah,
attractions
yeah.
that
The
are at
old
least
Back
up
to
on
the
the
Future
screen.
attraction, which became Simpsons
Exactly,
as
yeah.
well. Yep. Yeah, I agree.
So Star Tours, hey, although it still feels current and modern and futuristic in some ways, is 38 years old and inspired so many things beyond it. Like it laid the
Yeah,
foundation, so it was so state of the art at the time and continues to be such a force moving forward.
yeah.
So talk about the longevity of this ride here. Why do you think it's been so popular over 38 years now?
I think for me, at least, it because it does feel like one of these, like, classic Disney attractions. Like, in Disneyland Paris, I can speak to this, definitely. It was an opening day attraction and
Mhm.
still, I think, maintains to be one of the most modern rides we have in Disneyland
Yeah,
Paris.
well, that's true.
There's kind of a running joke that Disneyland Paris hasn't had any new attractions for I can't even remember how many years it is now, but it's the longest of any Disney park globally. And I don't know why that is. But yeah, I think for me, when I think about Disneyland Paris, at least, it's certainly because, it's one of very few screen-based kind of
Mhm.
simulation rides in that park. And I think possibly that's why in Hollywood studios, it is becoming less popular because there's just
Yeah,
so many other attractions for it to contend with.
yeah.
I think also, as I say, Star Wars is and will always have a really it's very popular and has a very loyal, hardcore fan base.
Mhm.
And for people like my husband who get dragged to Disney parks and don't particularly like Mickey and the princesses, for him, Star Tours and well, any kind of Star Wars IP or Marvel IP is like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very different audience who are really into those attractions as well. I don't want to stereotype, but I'm sure lots of dads, lots of teenage boys,
The
little
Hakuna
boys.
Matata dads at
Yeah, oh,
Animal
don't.
Kingdom love
The
the
Hakuna Matata t-shirts, most expensive day ever. Yeah, those dads. But yeah, I think, there's definitely and it's just a good ride, right? Like I
Mhm.
said, my mum
Yeah.
literally doesn't like Star Wars. I think she actively dislikes it, and Star Tours is one of her favorite rides. She absolutely loves it.
Actively dislikes it.
Yeah, I think
She
that's
goes out of
probably
her way to hate on Star Wars.
I don't know, I'll ask her. I don't think if I was like, "Mum, do you wanna come over and watch Star Wars?" I think she'd yeah, no, I don't think that would go down so well. But no, she loves it. She loves just kind of how silly it is. It's one of those
Mhm.
rides where you just laugh the whole way through. It's just a
Yeah.
very giggly, very silly attraction, and, yeah, it's great.
I think yes, ending everything you just said there. I think that the best part about this ride is how they were not precious with like this is how it must be forever when they built it. They were like, "Hey, you never know. 10 years down the line we might make more of these and we can update this attraction." So,
Yeah,
like you've already mentioned earlier, they keep updating this thing as new films come out, new new, new films come out, new shows come out. They're just incorporating all these different locations and places into the Star Tours experience. So, and nowadays, now we're on like the fourth iteration of Star Tours. There's like, I don't even know how many possibilities you can have of different rides when you go on Star Tours, but it's pretty high. Like it's almost
Yeah,
like 150, I think,
yeah,
different
it's in the hundreds,
options.
definitely.
So
Mhm.
like you ride this three times, you're not going to get well, let's just say it's very unlikely you'll get the same version any of those times.
Well,
Unless you're gonna tell me you just did it. You've
that
done it before.
depends. Well, the thing is, they are clever, Disney. They wouldn't be where they are today if they weren't.
Uh-huh.
And I think, we kind of touched on this earlier when I mentioned like The Mandalorian, but they definitely use it sometimes as a marketing vehicle.
Sure
So
do. Sure
I
do.
remember specifically going to Disneyland Paris, and this was the first time I went with my husband, and it was I don't know which iteration of Star Tours it was, but it was a new iteration. And we knew there was going to be some new content in it, and I was really excited.
Mhm.
And as soon as it started, BB-8 popped up, and everyone was like, that you could just feel the energy. Like everyone was really like, this was really new and
Yeah.
whatever. And then all of the content, and you'll forgive me, Anthony, you're the expert here, not me, but it was from the new Star Wars movie. It's not Force Awakens. I think it's The Last Jedi, the
Okay.
one with the red stuff
Yeah,
that like,
yeah, yep, the
is
planet,
that
yep,
Last Jedi?
great, yep, that'll be the
Oh,
planet.
thank God. Thank God for that. Didn't completely mortify myself on a Star Wars
You're on the right
podcast.
path, yeah.
Thank you. And yeah, and it was that scene, and you were flying along, and like the red stuff was coming out of the ground, and it was like absolutely incredible. And I'd been really cheeky on the way in and asked if
Mhm.
they could put the attraction in English as well, which does make a
Ooh, hey,
difference.
it sure does, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a
And
unique experience to have French Star Tours.
yeah, it's not yeah. Anyway, less said about that, the better. But yeah, it was great, and we came off it buzzing, and as I say, my husband's, like, never been to a Disney park before, massive Star Wars fan. He gets quite motion sick on Star Tours, but even still, he was
He
like,
stomachs it.
he was like, "That was fantastic." So, what did we do? We went back on it, and we had the exact same
Oh,
scenario, and it's because The Last Jedi was coming out, like, it had just come out or was coming out that
mhm,
month. I think it must have come out because otherwise it wouldn't have been as powerful for us. I think we must have seen it. I think we watched it, like, Christmas time, and this was, like,
sure.
January or February. Um, and yeah, and I know that they're doing this at the moment. So Tash has just been to, Disneyland.
Mhm.
She went in August, and it was the same. I think it was Ahsoka, or I
Yeah,
can't
yeah,
remember what she saw, but it was again, it was the same thing. It was just the new. So it's like I get that, right? If they've got new characters in there, and you go in and you see Darth Vader, you're gonna be like, oh, I wanted the new character. So it's a difficult one to
mhm.
kind of for them to tackle, but it can sometimes, I think, feel like a marketing vehicle.
Sure. Hey, hey, no, the great nonprofit company that is the Walt Disney Company.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, I love it. Like, if I see any of like Finn, Poe Dameron, any of those
Mhm.
characters, because those movies came out when I was already like into Star Wars. So I went to theaters and saw them. And like, yeah, I remember going to see The
Yeah,
Force
you had a
Awakens when
connection
it
with
came
those,
out.
and those were like your Star Wars in a way.
Exactly, they're my childhood
Yeah.
of Star Wars. So, yeah, I love all of those characters, BB-8, Rey, like, if any of them pop up, I always get really excited. So I do understand why they wanna put the newer stuff in more frequently.
Yeah, absolutely, and I totally get that too. And another thing that they added with later iterations is the concept of like the rebel spy.
Mm.
So like picking someone within the audience to quote unquote be the rebel spy, and it's like, who's it going to be? Could it be me? I have a good chance in this crowd, as equal as anybody. Have you ever gotten to be the rebel spy that has been picked out?
I have been the rebel spy twice.
Twice. Wow,
I know.
you hit the jackpot twice.
I know. So the first time was that amazing time when I was with my husband, and we'd asked if it could be in English, and it was
Hmm.
all the new stuff, and I was the rebel spy, and
Never
we
go
were
on it again. It's
buzzing.
perfect.
Yeah,
That's the
and
best it's
then
gonna get.
yeah, but then, as I say, we went straight back on, and I don't know why we did that. We should have ended it on a high. Went in, it was in French. It was the exact same scenario. We were like, "Oh, not quite the same." And then, yeah, the second time, this one's probably less surprising, but it was when I went on my hen weekend. So
Hmm.
obviously I had like the bridal Minnie
Oh,
Mouse
that's
ears,
awesome.
and yeah, so yeah.
That is so cool. I actually got to be it for the first time this past year in August. Not August
Nice.
this year, 2 Augusts ago, and D23 was in Anaheim.
Oh, very special.
The day before, yeah, I was able to I just was like, "Eh,
Oh,
I'll go on Star."
amazing.
I wasn't planning to go on it, and I was like, "Oh," 'cause I got it right back here. It's 10 minutes away down the road.
Yes.
I was like, "Oh, okay, I have to kill some time before my Roger Rabbit lightning lane is is queued up." So, I'll hop on Star Tours, all reliable, and, yeah, got for the first time in my
Oh, that
life.
is special.
That was a special time. And, I will say the other thing about its longevity and popularity is that, like, people just like seeing a ride that has a low wait time.
Yeah,
It is always
yeah.
something to say when it's, like, 15, 10, 30 minutes or less, and it's like the line keeps moving. You're very rarely are you ever stopped on
Mm,
in the Star Tours queue,
yeah.
and it's in air conditioning for the most part. Eventually, when it gets inside, it'll be in air conditioning. The longer part is in air conditioning, let's just say. And I always joke with like my wife, like, how many you see these families on the Disney vacations, right? They got like two kids in the stroller, double wide strollers, and all that stuff. They're long, hot day. They're exhausted, and we always are like, okay, all these attractions here, and like living with the land, it's all of those kind of ilk where you're just constantly moving. And it's in air conditioning. It's kind of
Mhm.
in quiet at times. Not the ride itself, but like the queue can be quiet.
Yeah.
How many marriages and relationships has this ride saved over the years by
Yeah,
just
yeah, where you
providing an air
need
conditioned space?
respite, yeah. I
Yeah.
think well, it's an interesting one though, and I guess we'll probably I don't know, it probably we'll talk about this in a moment, but I think that again, it's quite different when I think about Hollywood Studios versus Disneyland Paris, because in Disneyland
Hmm.
Paris, it typically has a longer wait time,
Yeah,
and
okay.
I think that's because if you're a Star Wars fan in Disneyland Paris, it's Star Tours, Hyperspace Mountain,
Hyperspace
obviously,
Mountain.
that but that's it, right? There isn't any other Star Wars there, so
Mhm.
it's not competing with itself.
Yeah,
So it's a much more popular attraction in France.
interesting. Well, I'm glad it is. Very happy
Yeah,
that it's popular. Those, you Europeans need your Star Wars.
we do.
Very
We need
popular
our fix.
market.
Yeah, and we're not getting Galaxy's Edge now. They've
Not
confirmed that.
I know.
So,
You
yeah.
got Lion King, Pride Rock.
Oh god. Why? In Paris,
You
where
get a
it
water
rains,
ride. Yep.
it'll feel like when Scar takes over and they've got no water and the hyenas around Pride Rock, that's the vibe that it will give. It's not gonna
Yeah, you'll
feel
get your
like the
Pride Rock,
nice
you got your Arendelle coming in, you got
Arundel's okay. I feel like we can pull that off. It snows sometimes in Paris, but yeah, Pride Rock in
Pride Rock
France
and in the sn oh my gosh, yeah, Pride Rock snow.
it's gonna feel like when Scar is king and it's, like, barren. That's how it's gonna feel.
Are they I don't that's why I'm going to the expert here. For the Arendelle stuff,
Mm,
are they is it just for Frozen Ever After, or are they adding, like, the little sleigh ride
the
that's over in
open
Hong Kong
thing.
too? Yeah.
Yeah, I think at the moment we've just had confirmation that it's a dark ride, and I think it will probably be Frozen Ever After because obviously Hong Kong got that. I know Tokyo's
Mhm.
dark ride is unique, but
Yeah.
Tokyo's owned by the Oriental Land Company, so I think they like basically just do whatever they want. So yeah, I think it will end up being Forever After, which annoys me a little bit because obviously
It's
it
such a
was
myth.
based on
Yeah.
Maelstrom, and it's like you're building this from scratch, like you could build something unique, but no, I think
I
it will
mean,
end up just being
at
the
least give you
same.
guys the coaster too. Like,
I know, yeah,
don't
I
just
know.
make
I
a
think we're
castle on a
getting
land for nothing.
I feel like we are getting something else. I know we're getting like a Tangled ride, but it's basically just teacups.
It's
And I
better than
think
the
there's like
bathroom we've got
yeah,
here.
well, yeah, that's true, that's true. I think it's, there's definitely like a frozen restaurant and a gift store coming. Obviously, there's always a gift store, but yeah, I'm pretty confident it's just Frozen Ever After, which is a bit of a shame.
Hey, Walt Disney Studios still,
Ah,
thriving,
yeah,
thriving.
the less said about that, the better.
Well, let's move on to, speaking of drawbacks.
Yeah,
Um,
nice.
in your opinion, what are some of the drawbacks, if any, for Star Tours and the experience perhaps of riding Star Tours?
Well, I've kind of touched on the biggie already, which
I
is
think you
the
did, yeah.
motion sickness. So
People.
I I'm very lucky that I don't experience motion sickness on attractions. I do get travel sick, particularly if I'm in the back of a vehicle or I'm on a coach, or if I'm texting when I'm in a car, I'll
Mhm.
make myself feel nauseous. But That's
Hmm.
very much travel related rather than like motion. And I do think they're separate things because my husband is absolutely fine in cars and coaches and traveling, but he gets very, very motion sick. And it's much worse for him if it's a screen based
Mhm.
attraction,
Mhm.
or if you've got to wear glasses, which obviously Star Tours, not
You
great for
can't have it
either of
without the
them.
glasses. Yeah.
So he actually won't go. Well, I don't know, we'll see what happens on our upcoming trip, but he's kind of resigned himself to the fact that he's not gonna go on these kinds of attractions anymore because they make him feel so ill. We did find a little bit of a hack, which was, making him take motion sickness medication in the morning.
It probably
Um
works, yeah.
yeah, but he's it's really interesting. Yeah, he's fine on coasters and things like that, but anything with a screen and
Mhm.
glasses and, he said he just starts to feel really hot all of a sudden
Hmm.
and then starts to feel sick, and as soon as he gets off the attraction, he's fine. But yeah, it's
In the moment,
really
it's
yeah,
intense.
in the moment, just really hot and like, "Oh god, I'm gonna throw up," which is so unusual for him because he doesn't feel sick in any other environment, and yeah, obviously not a Disney fan. I dragged him to Disneyland, and then he's discovered this, like, weakness that he didn't know he had. Um,
Interesting.
yeah, Ratatouille is a really
Oh,
bad one
yeah,
for him.
another one. Oh.
Yeah. So, yeah, Ratatouille and Star Tours, I think, are the worst for him. So, yeah, I think that's probably the major
Mhm.
drawback, and I think it's such a shame because, as I say, like, he is a massive Star Wars fan, so being able to go on this attraction, especially in Paris, where there isn't anything else really apart from
Mhm.
Hyperspace
Mhm.
Mountain.
Yeah.
But otherwise, yeah, I mean, there's nothing bad about it. It's fantastic.
That's so interesting because, we might be the same in regards to how, like, this doesn't affect us, but yet driving in a car. If I'm not driving,
Oh,
I'll get car sick.
yeah, same, but rides are fine.
But I can, like, put me on that Simpsons ride in Universal
Yeah,
all the time, and I'll be fine, whereas other
yeah,
people are like,
same.
"I can't do this, I'll throw up."
Yeah,
And
I think
I
there's a distinction between, like, car sick and motion sick for sure.
absolutely, yeah. If I look at my phone once, if I'm in the passenger seat, I'm done. I'm
Me
done. The
too.
whole day I'll be out of pocket.
And don't even get me started on boats. How are you on boats?
Oh, boats, are we talking like a little, like, boat riding on the river, or are we talking like a cruise?
I've never been on a cruise, so I'm talking like a ferry, which is like a
Okay.
small
Ferries I think
cruise.
ferries have been fine with, I will say.
Okay, and then a small boat? Have you been on a small
I
boat?
have been on a small b I've been on boats, quite a lot of my younger life, so yeah, I have, experience with that, and I have to this point, I wouldn't say that I've felt really nauseous ever on those things.
Oh, that's lucky.
The
I,
only thing I've ever would say I felt nauseous for was, here in the States, if you go to, like, a very public beach town, there's probably going to be some sort of, like, little boat that is, like, meant to be like a rocket on the water, and
Mhm,
the intent is to get, like, 50 to somewhere up to, like, 50 people probably on this little boat that's just gonna jump off of water and go
oh
up and
gosh.
down, and it's just
Okay.
woof. No, that got me, but
Yeah,
usually
I was
most
gonna
people are,
say.
like, respectful when they're
Yeah, yeah.
driving boats
Well,
around. Yeah.
I'm very grateful that you and I do not feel sick on Star Tours, but yeah, I think that's the drawback. I think it's a shame for people that do feel sick on simulation rides.
Mhm, mhm. I think that is the thing too, and it's interesting that in the behind the attraction doc, they note, like, we figured out the math to, like, what's the exact minute and moment that someone, if you're on this ride for a little longer, you will be sick. They figured
Mhm.
it out, like, where the
Yeah.
line is, where the majority of people will not feel, nauseous or any level of sickness when riding this ride, and they stretch it out. And the ride is long. Like, you get your time, like, we've said, like, you generally can get on it pretty quickly given all things. Um, but and when you're on it, it's like you don't feel shortchanged at all. Like, it's a 5-minute ride. You're gonna have like two or three scenes. You're gonna have a rebel spy. There's a lot going on this ride, and
When you
the
get
fact.
2 scenes, so you've just triggered a thought, and maybe I do have a drawback.
Okay.
When you get 2 scenes, it makes me really angry, and there's one scene that when it starts, I know it's gonna be a 2 scene, like, if the
Uh huh.
second scene starts and it's the one with, like, I think it's the underwater one with the, what are they called?
Oh,
The
the
Jar Jar
Gungans?
Binks?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one, and I've had that one loads. If that comes up and it's like, "We're gonna show you where the ship is," or something like that, one of them says it to you. I can't remember what he says
That
exactly.
was a good,
He
depiction.
says something like that, and when that starts playing, I'm like, "Oh, great, it's gonna be the one where it's only 2." And it's really weird, actually. I've had that one multiple times, and it's got a
Mhm.
very slightly different ending. So sometimes you crash into a ship and it pierces the screen, so it's like
Mhm.
3D and it looks like it's broken through the screen, and sometimes it goes in and the robot just, like, throws paint at the screen instead. Have you
Yeah.
had that one?
I have had that one. That's
Yeah,
a good one.
yeah, I don't like that one
You
'cause then
you
you spend it too short-changed.
That's true, that's true. You're like and it's in your experience, it's a longer wait in Paris, like, to get back on it
Exactly.
is not the same, like, "Oh, I can just hop back on, it's 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I didn't lose a thing."
Yeah, I feel like I get that one disproportionately more than the other the others.
Well, here's hoping you don't get it for a while so that you're
I hope
able
so too.
to experience some of the other ones and the joy
Mm,
that they
yeah.
offer here. Um, yeah, that's such I mean, it's such a drawback. Again, that could be a drawback. You get the same one more times than you
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
admit, right? Like, you're like I feel like for me, the Hoth one is a similar, like, a consistent
What
one where
happens in it?
you just see the battle from Empire with the walkers and
Okay.
all that, and then you get stuck in the snow,
Oh,
and then
yeah.
3PO's like, "Everyone lean backwards. No,
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
lean
yeah.
forward now." And then you go down and then yeah.
What's the one where you get, like, eaten by is that the same one as the
I think
underwater
that's the
one?
Naboo one, yeah, because all the water
Yeah, I
creatures
get
will eat
that
you,
one
yeah.
all the time. I get that one all the time.
Again, here's hoping you don't get that one anytime soon.
I hope so.
I haven't had that one for a while. I think with the new update, they've kind of X-nayed that one a little bit
Well,
here. So hopefully, if you go on
Paris
it
obviously hasn't got that memo because I feel like I get it in Paris all the time.
come on, Paris, get with the program. Um, yeah, and of course, the motion sickness I think could be a big detractor for a lot of people. I've been on it
Yeah.
with. I feel like I'm the only person that doesn't really get sick on it in my groups that I go with,
Mhm.
and everyone
Yeah.
emerges. They're like, "Oh, I need to sit. I need to sit
Yeah,
for a couple
a lot
minutes."
of people that I know that don't get travel sick or motion sick ordinarily in life feel funny on that ride. So,
Mhm.
yeah, it's definitely a problem.
It's interesting with my wife. She like until she hit, like, 30, she was like, "I never had a problem with it," and
Mhm.
then now that we go on it pretty regularly, she's like, it hits me in a different way, I can't explain it, she just wants to keep fighting through it, she's like, "Let's go back on it, maybe it won't happen this time,"
Yeah.
only to find
Yeah.
out, "Oh, I'm a little
Oh,
nauseous." So maybe she
bless
should
her.
take the motion
Yeah,
sickness.
I recommend it. Just take pop a motion sickness pill, or like a travel sickness pill, and, yeah, it works for him, so hopefully it'll work for her.
Oh, good, good. I hope that works too. All right, so moving towards like the now and the here and now. We have Galaxy's Edge, at least in Walt Disney World and Disneyland. It's the next expansion of Star Wars in the parks in many ways. And Galaxy's Edge is both open and thriving in both those areas. They're always top of the of wait times, and people always like will make pilgrimage specifically to those parks for those experiences. So with that now being open, and it's been open almost 5 years now, over 5 years, I think. What do you think the future holds for Star Tours, and will there always be a place for it in the Disney parks and around the globe?
It's a bit of a difficult question because I think it varies by
Hmm.
park.
Hmm.
So, as I've kind of alluded
Hmm.
to a
Hmm.
few times in today's episode, in Paris, I think Star Tours has got a much bigger presence because it's located in Discoveryland, which, as I said, is like Tomorrowland, and there's a lot of Star Wars stuff going on there.
Sure.
All of the Star Wars meet and greets are there. You've got Hyperspace Mountain, which is the overlay on Space Mountain, and there isn't a Star Wars presence in Walt Disney Studios, which is kind of like the Hollywood Studios equivalent, if you will. So they make a much bigger deal about Star Wars in the main park. And the kind of flagship of that is Star Tours. They've even put like a big X-wing on top of the building
Yes, they have.
now. Like
Oh, it's so
it's
cool.
yeah. So they're definitely trying to like ramp that up. And now that we've had it confirmed for definite that we're not getting a Galaxy's Edge, I feel like they have to have that Star Wars presence. And Star Wars is in the Nighttime Spectacular as well, which obviously takes place in that park. So it all kind of ties in nicely. And I think that Star Tours does definitely have a place forever at
Hmm.
Disneyland Paris, or at least for, my lifetime.
Sure, sure.
However, I wouldn't be surprised if we see the closure of Star Tours in Hollywood studios. I think
Really?
that I think so, because
Oh.
Galaxy's Edge is in the same park, and it feels so disjointed because it's like Galaxy's Edge is this new wave of theme park land where it's immersive, and, if you ask how
Hmm.
to get to Toy Story, the cast members will act like you speaking a different languages, that whole kind of secret
Yeah.
cinema-esque experience, whereas Star Tours isn't like that.
Hmm.
It's part of the same universe, but it's, like, different timeline potentially, like, obviously, and I think that it's such a shame geographically that they couldn't have it at the entrance. It would have been such a nice little story of, "Oh, pop
Hmm.
on the Star Cruiser and get off at
Hmm. True.
Batuu," or do you know what I mean? They'd
Yeah.
added a new storyline, and from my experience of going to or Walt Disney World, sorry, 3 years ago, it always had a 5-minute wait, and I'm kind
Hmm.
of curious to see what it will look like this year, but I think for an attraction where, they've already got the IP in the park, and it's disjointed and confusing, and it's always got a 5-minute wait, unless they're, like, solely using it as a marketing vehicle to try and
Yeah.
advertise the latest Disney Plus series, which it sounds like they kinda do that sometimes, then it's kinda just taking up space, and I was one of few
Okay.
people that thought when they announced Monsters, Inc., I think everyone straight away was like, "Oh, well, say your goodbyes, Muppets, like, you're obviously going," but I was like, "Maybe they'll get rid of Star Tours." Like, I genuinely was like,
Well.
"That's the obvious because you don't have Muppets elsewhere." Obviously, they had this bigger plan with Muppets and Aerosmith going and da da da, Rock and Roller Coaster, but I wouldn't be surprised if Star Tours goes in the next kind of 10 years to make space for something else in Hollywood studios.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I hope I don't see that day.
Oh,
But I
you have
think,
to fly to Anaheim.
we'll have to fly to Anaheim or Paris. I mean, both are almost
Yeah,
an equidistant flight from here.
but it's interesting in Anaheim as well, right? Because 'Cause you've got Galaxy's Edge in the main park,
Mhm.
which obviously that wasn't open when I went. I went about a month before it opened. I'm quite good at doing that, missing things.
Come on.
But yeah, so I can't speak for Disneyland, because I haven't experienced what that park is like with Star Tours
Mhm.
and also Galaxy's Edge. But I think, yeah, Paris, all good, is gonna stay for sure. But I think it could go from Hollywood Studios.
Well, I think in Disneyland's benefit, it's like Galaxy's Edge is, like, in one corner, and then
Yeah.
Star Tours is in the other corner, so they're,
Mhm.
like, almost as far apart from away from each other as possible, so that you're not necessarily gonna get confused, like, you have to almost, unless you go a different way, which you can go a different way at Hollywood Studios. You can go past Mickey Minnie's Runaway Railway, go past Toy Story Land, and then turn left, and then you'll get to Galaxy's Edge.
Mhm.
The other path is right past Star Tours, and then right past Muppets Courtyard, and then leads you into Galaxy's Edge.
Yeah.
So, you know, that is a thing that could potentially happen if they're like, yeah, we need the space for something else. If they want to expand the incoming Monsters Inc. land, whatever they want to
Yeah.
call it these days.
Yeah.
That might be the first casualty of that. And they'll say, yeah, you have Star Tours other places, get used to it.
Mhm.
You have Galaxy's Edge here. I will say that just personally as a fan, like the criticism that I'll hear the most of like Galaxy's Edge itself is that like they'll say like I don't like it takes place in a specific time and place in the Star Wars galaxy. They're
Yes.
like if I
Yeah.
want to go to a Star Wars land, it should be like a mix and match of everything from the movies, right? I should be able to go into the cantina here. I should be able to like have a ride that's basically like the Hoth sequence. I should
Yeah.
Mustafar from episode 3 should be right over here. I should see every character roaming and running about and all that stuff. And I'm like, but you get that in Star Tours. Star Tours is literally
Yeah.
that. Like time and space it's not a problem. You can have
Yes.
all your fun and wacky adventures. You can have Hoth in the first sequence and the pod race sequence in the next one. You can go to episode 9 in the third sequence, right?
Yeah.
All this exists outside of that, and for an accessibility thing, that's a great way for people to get their toes wet in Star Wars. Or if you're just a casual fan, you're like, I don't need to be in the nitty gritty about like, all right, does this food, does the writing on the trash can match the language
Yeah,
in Star Wars? It's like I
yeah.
don't need to be concerned
I don't
about
need
that.
that, yeah. Yeah,
So it gives both people like their cake and eating it too in
it's
some
true.
ways, which I like that.
Yeah, very much so, and it's interesting when you say about, like, the timing of, like, Batuu and everything because I think as I've kind of already admitted, I really like the newer stuff. So the
Mhm.
fact that like BB-8 might be rolling around or Ray might walk past for me is
Yep.
great. But I appreciate for some people, they want to go to a Star Wars land where they can meet Darth Vader, right? Like
Yeah.
he's the ultimate villain, or they want to have a meet and greet with Leia. Like, what a shame that we can't have Princess Leia walking around.
Sure.
Like, I think I get that completely. I guess that's why they have Chewbacca roaming so much because
They got
he's
Chewie.
universal.
Yep. He sure is. He across
So,
time and space, Chewbacca will always be
yeah,
there.
the one constant in the Star Wars universe. But yeah, it's yeah, if you know, if you're craving those classic characters, go and ride the Star Cruiser with C-3PO and R2 and see, you know, all these familiar faces pop up. So yeah, it
Yeah.
definitely has that going for it.
Well, and Star Tours lives in Galaxy's Edge in a way too, with Rex now being the DJ
Yes,
at Oga's Cantina, which I
very
think is
true.
such a fun interactive way to keep that that story going, and just to make him officially a part of the Star Wars galaxy. And
Yeah.
what a fun way to like be like a cool Easter egg that means something, everything to somebody, but nothing to other people.
Absolutely, and it feels quite full circle as well because a lot of the robots that are in the queue for Star Tours are from an old attraction. I think it was
Yeah.
America Sings, and then a lot of them were put into what is now Tiana's Bayou Adventure, but was
Yep.
Splash Mountain, and then a lot of them, they just took the fur off them, the skin, and you've got what was once a duck, but is now, you know, an animatronic robot working at a airport, spaceport. Yeah.
I
So,
love it.
you
Star
know,
Tours can take you anywhere.
yeah, love it. But yeah, repurposing animatronics, you know, we love recycling.
Hey, recycling, it's sustainable. We're
Yeah,
all about sustainability
exactly.
here. Now, I
Yeah.
will say the one thing that you kind of touched upon there, that I was a little bit like, I am upset about losing Muppets Courtyard because I
Yeah.
hope that the Muppets 4D 3D, sorry, I hope that it becomes a 4D show one day. I'm sad to see that go and to not have like knowledge of where it may go in the future. Now I know there's
Mhm.
rumblings that like the Lightning McQueen space might turn into a future space for that once they get that villains new show out of there, and then that Muppets addition to Rock and Roller Coaster, and that will make that like a Muppets new Muppets Courtyard basically over
Yeah.
there. Um, Now somehow the launch bay, a Star Wars launch bay in Hollywood Studios, and the Disney
Yeah.
Junior thing survives every change. I don't understand why. I would have thought, man, Hollywood Studios is tailor made to have the Monsters Inc. land go right here. You have to walk right past it to get to Toy Story Land. They'll keep the traffic
Yeah.
down over there. It'll be wonderful, etc. Um, Somehow it survived again. Um,
Crazy.
the once I like absorbed the knowledge that the Muppets area was going away and they were incorporating it into a Muppets, not Muppets, but a Monsters Inc. land. The one
Yes.
thought that I did have though was like, man, they missed their one opportunity ever to connect Galaxy's Edge to Star Tours.
Mhm.
Like
True.
they could, if they were ever going to expand Galaxy's Edge to add more things, more space, more rides, more restaurants, more opportunities, they had it.
Yeah.
And they said, "Nope, we're going with Monsters Inc. See you later."
Yeah.
Which I'm like, "Okay, man, that's kinda that's a little tragic," but I get that they're trying to just, like, keep it the same one-to-one between Walt Disney World and Disneyland, so if you go to a Galaxy's Edge because Batuu exists, it's a thing, you're not gonna
Yeah.
get a different Batuu depending on where you go, but my complaint is the experiences are already different because they give so much stuff to Disneyland. They have, like, fireworks specific experiences from Galaxy's Edge. They have roaming droids that are different. They have food that's different all the time over there. And because of the Star Cruiser that once existed here, that's now become
Oh god.
uh, It's wonderful. It's becoming an office space. How crazy. They were like, it can't change. It can't change at all.
Mhm.
And now that that's been gone, it's been shuttered for almost 2 years now. They had an opportunity and then said, nah, forget it. So Launch
Yeah,
Bay
I
exists,
think
Monsters Inc. comes in, Star Tours
I
survives for now.
know. Yeah, you make an excellent point. I think from my perspective, and I guess this kind of because they showed us the concept art for what Walt Disney Studios was gonna look like in Paris, and
Mhm,
there was a Batuu on the concept art, so it was clearly in their plans at some point, and obviously we now know that's not happening. But I think there was a big question mark then because obviously Batuu in Florida and in California opened at the same time, so no one ever really questioned it. Whereas or like it was a few months apart, but they're in development at the same time.
mhm,
Whereas
mhm.
because this French version was like so many years later, I was like, "Oh, is it gonna be Batuu or is it gonna be something different?"
Could
And
be,
then it
yeah.
kind of made me like go down this path where I was like, "It's such a shame that the California and the Florida versions are both Batuu, and wouldn't it be cool if like California had Batuu, but Florida had a completely different kind of planet with a
Would've been
different
awesome.
climate, different exactly. And also, I do think Batuu is a little bit of a cop out. And don't get me wrong, like I think that the Imagineers have done the most incredible job on the Imagineering. Was it the Imagineering series or Behind the Attraction? I think it's Behind the Attraction they talk about. I can't even remember. They all blur into one. But I've definitely watched a documentary where they went into a lot of detail about the work and the craftsmanship that went into it. And it's absolutely
Mhm,
incredible. And it's some of the finest Disney Imagineering we'll ever see. But let's be honest, it's kind of Tatooine. Like, in my eyes, I feel like it's like, we can't do Tatooine because then the diehard fans will get annoyed that there's certain details missing, or we'll have to
mhm.
try and put 2 suns in the sky, and we can't do that because
You can't. That's
we're
right.
not NASA. So I feel like they were like, "Oh, we'll do, like, a Tatooine point
Familiar
2.0."
elements, yeah.
Yeah, so it's familiar, exactly. But I think it would have been really nice, especially in Paris where the climate's completely different, if they had added like, another kind of they did it with Blizzard Beach, right? We could have Hoth in Paris.
Sure.
But yeah, I think I do think I get it, right? It's easy to just kind of replicate existing plans. If you've already made one
Mhm.
blueprint, you can just roll it out in other parks. But it would have been really, really cool to see different Galaxy's Edges that are based on different locations.
Yeah, I agree. I think that would've been awesome, and, if the African savannah can exist in,
Oh, don't.
Paris, then I think
God.
that
I
anything
don't
can
think it's gonna happen. Like, honestly, going out on a whim, I really feel in the same way that they said we were getting Galaxy, I don't think this Lion King thing's gonna I just don't.
a water ride is tough out there.
There's a reason we don't have water rides in Paris.
That'll be real tough. Like, I it's
I
only
can't
gonna be
see it.
open 3 months a year.
Yeah, I can't see it. I feel like
Eh,
something I don't think it will happen. I hope it doesn't
they'll
happen.
have to heat the water all the time, which will be an expensive cost. It'll just be steaming.
It would just be so, like, we have obviously other theme parks, like, in the UK and Europe that do have log flumes and
They sure
things,
do, yep.
and they just turn them off when the weather's bad, which is all the time, so I can't see it working.
I can't either, but for now, Star Tours is still
Yes,
working, and I just
Star
checked.
Tours is working very well.
It is currently at a 10-minute wait over at Hollywood Studios right now at the time of recording
Told
this.
you, it's never I wonder what it's oh, Paris, they'll be
Right.
in asleep. It's half
Closed
past
right now.
10.
Yep.
10:30 in Paris.
Oh, man. Well, I hope that it didn't get too long today. Hopefully, it was only a half hour for the
Yeah,
folks.
yeah, there
Um,
you go.
but Mercedes, this has been such a wonderful conversation here, and it's always a thrill to chat with you about Disney and all the fun stuff that is going on, and to chat Star Tours. 38 years, holy cow! Hopefully, it reaches 50. I want to see that day where it hits 50, and to celebrate this incredible attraction and the legacy that it set forth for both Disney and just theme parks overall. Thank you for joining. And Mercedes, where can the folks find you and Chat Disney, the Chat Disney podcast online?
So I am Mercedes Lois on the socials, and then you can find Chat Disney wherever you get your podcast listening, whatever, Spotify, Apple, all the podcast
All the
places.
podcasting places, that's
All of
right. And any new ones that pop up too, who knows? They're just
yeah,
RSS
exactly.
feed goes everywhere.
Yeah.
And folks, thank you so much for listening to this episode. Of course, we'll be back with a brand new episode next week in your podcast feeds. And until then, may the force be with you. Take care.